Yes, actually, because of course, like the name implies, PADI, plant a decade. Of course, a decade is 10, so we are planting 10,000 trees in 10 years. That's exactly the goal. And also, the other part of the goal, particularly, is to bridge the information and knowledge gap in climate education, climate awareness. When I was in service, when I was serving as a NYC core member in Benue State, I remember I did a sample, like a research, and I went around graduates of Nigerian universities asking them questions about climate change. But unfortunately, many of them do not understand the concept of climate change. Some of them don't even know. Some of them don't even believe it exists. So it was really a big deal. So we had a chance at PADI to speak to at least 2,500 graduates of Nigerians right there in Benue State, and that was one of the first things we did. And also, we went on to plant, to give and donate 111 tree seedlings to NYSC Benue State, which is, of course, one of the things we intend to do. So that's like counting down on the 10,000 trees we want to plant in 10 years. That's exactly what we do. You know, there's always a thing about people not reading. And one of the things we are trying to do is to bring climate education out in the space, out in the faces of people, so that people can be in the know. People can learn the rules as to their roles and responsibility in the climate discourse. Yes, my name is Onyebuchi, and I regard myself a forest communicator, a climate action advocate, whichever we want to pick, it's fine by me. So this morning, I would not be flying alone. I'll be flying on two wings, and I have an erudite scholar, a very eminent personality, someone I revere so much, a person of academic excellence and, you know, so many qualifications I don't even want to start mentioning. So today we'll be getting into the know as to some of these things that we do not know, especially, you know, it's often believed that people don't read research. It's only researchers that read research, which is not supposed to be. Governments, people, and everybody should be in the know as to research. So I have a research icon as well with me in the studio today that we are going to be getting into the dictate and the, you know, the nitty-gritty of forestry and climate change. So that's the question. Is there any link between forestry and climate change? But we'll get into that before we finish up the show today. So I have with me a doctor, Dr. Agwu Onyebuchi Patrick. He's a visiting scientist at the University, Frederick Alexander University in Germany. He's a DAD scholar, that's German scholarship, I think for his master's or PhD. Of course, yes, he's been around the world, you know, traveling, just doing research on, you know, forest regeneration, on climate change, biodiversity, climate conservation, and every of the things you can talk about climate change. Yes, we are focused on, you know, aiming at Agenda 13, which is climate action, 15, which is life on land, exactly, which relates directly to forestry, and Agenda 17, which is partnership for the goals. And that's why we are doing what we are doing towards achieving a sustainable environment, a green space for the world to thrive. Okay, he also finished from the University of Ibadan for his master's. He's also known to be a forest taxonomist in the University of Ibadan. He also had so many collaborations. He's published so many papers. If you want to check, the name is Dr. Agwu Patrick Onyebuchi. You can check all around ResearchGate, every of those mediums that you can get the research. Yes, I have that eminent personality with me in the studio, and we're going to be getting into the discourse for today on Plant a Decade Initiative. So good morning, Dr. Patrick.
Thank you very much, Onyebuchi.
It's so good to have you.
Thank you so much.
All right, sir. So let's get straight into it. Of course, you are a researcher and you've done so many works. And I also believe that one of the works we are trying to see is how to, you know, bring people into the know, into the understanding of forestry. What is forestry in the general terms of it? How can we, because of course this program is not just for maybe erudite scholars and all of that. It's just for a layman as well. So in the best layman understanding, let's get into the know. What is forestry in Nigeria?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Sincerely, I must appreciate this very initiative. And I will also like to be part of it.
You're already part of it. Even when we started, I called you.
Yes.
You're part of it.
Yeah, when you say forestry, forestry, there are two different words. Forest is just like a large area that is predominantly with the forestry species, with a tree, basically. A tree that is above 10 meters height, that is predominant predominant in the area. So the area can be referred to as forest. And when you have a land area in area that about 70% of them are tree above 10 meters height, the area can be called a forest.
A forest, yes.
Yes. So when you talk about forestry, forestry is just the science of it. Studying that forest is forestry. So in layman language, that is the best I think I can.
All right. So we understand the height because if you have a plant that is not as high as 10 meters, some people will call it, because when they see bushes, they say it's a forest, but it's not. Because the plantings, they are just shrubs and maybe lowland plants and flora. They are not having that particular requirement of that 10-meter height.
Yes.
And so they cannot be regarded as a forest. Of course, yes. I know there's something as urban forestry. After we talk about, forestry, maybe regeneration or afforestation, having forest, there's something also about, urban forestry and how it helps. But yes, let's get straight into the question of the day, that what are the roles of forestry in climate change? We know climate change is a global phenomenon. We know it's a topical issue. Of course, it has been recorded that July was one of the warmest in the world. I remember in some places in South America and some places in Europe, they had drought, they had heat wave stroke, and it was really a massive thing for them. And of course, we are seeing that many of these things are affecting our communities. So our agricultural producers, our farmers are complaining of the change in the, the variation in the weather patterns, how that, normally, if maybe they plant something, they expect that this time it's supposed to be fruiting, but unfortunately it's not fruiting. How does forestry, how does it link straight up to climate change?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. This has been my research area for about 6-7 years now.
Oh.
Forest has a direct link to climate change. That is why we foresters are known as the major stakeholders when it comes to the issue of climate change. We are known as the major stakeholders because forest has a direct link, direct relation to climate change.
Yes.
Basically, to a layman language, to our normal biology we did, probably you have been taught in secondary school, we believe that man, usually we take in oxygen on our daily activities, daily, then we breathe out carbon dioxide. Then nature have it that when a man breathing oxygen and release carbon dioxide, nature have it that a tree should be around that we absorb that carbon dioxide that we are taking out and absorb that CO2. So tree is like opposite. Tree we release oxygen and taking CO2. Well, like the other way, man taking oxygen and release CO2. Yes. So this has been one of the major aspects of this issue of CO2 emission, that is greenhouse gases emission, has been one of the major problems we are facing in the world today. Why? What do I mean by this? When I say climate change, the term climate change refers to a shift, changes in weather condition, in rainfall, precipitation over a long period of time. That is climate change. So, and what are the major causes of this climate change? The major causes of climate change has been where we have excess, it's like where you have excess of these greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. In the
atmosphere, yes, sir.
Has been the major cause of climate change. And when you burn daily in the world today, during our process of the industrial development, we burn out fossil fuels to the atmosphere that got the atmosphere polluted, that resulted to a lot of diseases, such as skin diseases, cellular problem, and a lot of human beings, especially in Africa, has been one of the major vulnerable to that climate change. Now, someone asked me some time ago, what roles are trees playing in climate change? Yes, trees are playing a major role in climate change by trying to helping us in absorbing those CO2 when we burn down our fossil fuel in our daily activities, in our industrial development processes. Even in our urbanization, we cut down a lot of trees to build houses, to build roads. So trees have been the major ingredient in helping us in stabilizing the weather condition. That is why when you are inside the forest, you kind of air you breathe in is unique compared to where you are in the market, in Bridge market. So tree has played a major role, apart from the major role has been helping us in stabilizing, absorbing those CO2, which which is also known as a carbon sink or CO2. Even when a tree is cut down, even when the tree is cut down in your room, when you have a tree, a plank, a plank to build your, to have your chair, your chair, your dining table, furnitures in your room, basically. Those carbon are still inside those trees. They are still carbon. They are still holding that carbon. So that was why we also try to promote that we should try as much as we can to make your room, to make your house to be nature friendly. Have those furnitures, not synthetic, not this iron. Let it be so, because we are playing a major role in helping us. Is it absorbing the CO2? It's not aligning. Is it helping us to not align our atmosphere to be polluted? Yes. So apart from the road, apart from the aspect, also forests also play a major role. It helps us. It gives us alternative to our cooking intensive, basically maybe for domestic purposes. Forest provides for us, helping us to provide, like for example, firewood, like serve as a major alternative to this gases we use in cooking at home. Those gases, I wish we could be able to
and it's even getting expensive at this time. They said it's going to about 12.5 kg is going to sell for 18,000 naira, according to the news yesterday. Yes,
according to that, apart from that, it's even more harmful to use gases to our health at home. But we are not aware. We are trying to move with the train. We try to catch on with the developed world. But those guys in developed world, we know very well that they pollute more, but they have a way of managing it. They clean their environment. But we in Africa, we are the major, we are more vulnerable to those climate change, because when those guys pollute, when they clean up the environment, because the global world, those greenhouse gases just channel straight to us here in Africa. So it's been a major problem. And also, climate change has both forests play also a very important role in ameliorating, in controlling our weather condition. And at the same time, when the climate moved towards extreme, this is currently my current research focus now. Climate change can cause a shift in habitat, because every tree living has every tree has its own environmental requirements to survive, to grow, to fruit.
Temperature requirements,
water requirements, rainfall requirements, humidity. So when the temperature becomes so hot, or probably the humidity reduced, or the precipitation became reduced, in that case, those trees will not grow again. So tree will now there's something we call shifting in habitat. Those trees will try to look for a suitable environment. Probably they have grown here in Ibadan before. If Ibadan become polluted, they try to look around Nigeria, probably outside Nigeria, and look where else are the most suitable for them, so they can be able to migrate and start thriving there.
Wow.
So the climate play a major role. You said something earlier. You said some trees, food before. During my research those days when I was doing my PhD, I was told that Gasina Cola and Cola said that they fruit twice a year. But recently they are now fruiting once a year. Why? Because I tried to know why in Ibadan precisely, and in the north. So what happened was that what I discovered was that the fruit around July, August, the current temperature of that July, August is still favorable for them to fruit. Then the other time they are fruiting before, towards December, the temperature and the probability has moved extreme higher. So it's not allowing the seeds to form. The embryo is not forming any longer those periods. So they now limit themselves to fruiting once a day. And in support of Nigeria, like Niger State, for example, the environment has become very harsh for them. They have been unable to fruit. And I'm afraid of Africa. I'm afraid for Nigeria. I'm afraid for Africa, because we are more vulnerable to this. Because this will lead to a lot of food insecurity. People will plant trees. People will plant their maize in the farm. The maize will no longer fruit again because of the extreme effect of the climate. And those developed world, they have gotten to a level that before they will plant any even agricultural crop or any tree, they do what we call ecological niche modeling to identify if that particular environment will be suitable for that species to grow before they plant it. So before they plant their maize, they will run a model to see if that environment is suitable for that maize to grow and to fruit before planting.
Wow.
But yeah, because before then they must have known that this maize we stripe, do well before planting.
Viability test and all of that.
No, we could call it basically, that one is just before to see if it will grow me. But this one is just environmental requirement. Can this environment be able to carry this plant to grow fast and to produce big yield? So we in this part of the world don't do that. We just, if a farmer will just wake up in the morning, those guys in the village carry their cutlass. Every year they plant maize and cassava in this land. They are not care. Nobody cares about the environmental requirement. So nobody cares about if the environment have changed. If the current environment can still carry, can still be suitable, can still habit, can still accommodate that plant to strive. That is why we are having this issue of low yield in species. So that is why Africa, we are one of them.
Africa must rise up. Nigeria must rise up. Okay, let's talk about your work, your research. I remember, according to United Nations Environment Program, there was an article that was released that increased temperatures have contributed to a 34% reduction in agricultural productivity growth in Africa since 1961. So, of course, this is not just coming. This has been in place, that increased temperatures. Of course, the changes we have in the temperature variation in Nigeria and in Africa basically have contributed to about 34% reduction. So if there's no food, if there's food shortage, like you are saying, one of the things we can link to it is the climate change scenario that is already affecting it. Yes, we can also take that to the bank. Of course, it's a research by the United Nations Environment Program. Also, you said something about your research that there was a time Garcinia cola, a particular species of tree called the Garcinia cola, was fruiting twice. Bitter cola, yes. That's the name. Was fruiting twice in the year, but now but you said recently in Ibadan you noticed that it's just fruiting once. So from what time was your PhD to now? Let's try to put a time to it to see how the change is affecting so fast.
No, my PhD, I completed my PhD 2019. I started 2016, and my PhD was to cover the whole of West Africa. Okay,
let's talk about it. How many countries were you able to work in? Particularly?
Yes, I was able to collect data from 2 countries, Nigeria and Cote d'Ivoire.
Okay.
Yes.
Other estimations, maybe like laboratory works and some other experimental works too?
Yeah, all the laboratory work, a lot of the experimental work was done in Germany. I did it at 3 universities in Germany, University of Bonn, that is United Nations University, the University of Rostock, then the Friedrich Alexander University in Erlangen, also in Germany. So after that, the PhD, I was opportunity, I got in a postdoc with also DAD, which I was hosted by also in Erlangen, Friedrich Alexander University. And after that, I started as a visiting scientist in that university in Germany, which we focus more mainly on climate change, how the impact of climate change on the growth of tropical species, on the fruiting tropical fishes, and the annual, I told you something earlier about the carbon sequestration potential of trees to absorb carbon. Every tree has different potentials. Of course, just as you have me, you. My name is Patrick. You are Onyebuchi. You might be able to finish 2 wraps of fufu at once. I might take up to 3 or 4. So we have
different capacity,
carrying capacity, variabilities. So the same thing is applicable to trees also. Every tree species have different carrying capacity of absorbing, sequestering, storing carbon. So some trees have those hardwood has more potential to sink more carbon. So we try to look at the annual carbon biomass to see annually which of the species sequence more of carbon. And then we look at them. Are they also economic species? Are they multiple species? So we try to promote those species that farmers should plant those trees. So as able to absorb more of those carbon, so as to clean our environment.
Wow, that's amazing. I saw one of your articles on ResearchGate, a journal, a paper that you published. I think this is 2018, December 2018. Farmers' perception on cultivation and the impact of climate change on goods and services provided by Garcinia cola in Nigeria. I think your project, you published different works, particularly from that project. Like, sure. It must be a very big project. Do you want to tell us about it a bit, just a bit into it?
Yeah, the project is a big project. As I told you, the project was funded by 4 different international organizations. The project was funded by firstly by WASCA, that is the West African Science Center on Climate Change and Adapted Land Use. Also was also partly also funded also by Federal Ministry of Education and Research in Germany. Also part of the funding was Center of Excellence in Cote d'Ivoire, and also Idea White for Conservation artists in USA. So 4 different known international institutions funded the project. Wow. So of course the project must be robust enough.
Absolutely.
Must be robust enough. So the study area became very wide. Currently I have about 6 publications that is out. So on that project I have about 4 still on the pipeline, which I'm sure in the next few weeks from now, they will start coming out one by one, hopefully.
Let's talk about your new project you're about to do. Of course, the ones you're writing already, the papers you're writing. Let's talk a bit about it. Or perhaps if you don't want to share some information so people don't get to, steal your intellectual property, of course, that's okay. But yes, let's get into the scientific, nitty-gritties into these things. How do we, of course, they are on climate change, basically.
Yes.
So, yes,
let's get on. Of course, in science, in education, we believe in knowledge sharing. That's the purpose of the research. And the purpose of doing research is that you do research that someone can be able to emulate your research. Someone should be able to follow your methods to do the same thing. So there's nothing to hide. It's nothing to.
Okay.
It's not a secret code.
So let us know the few ones you are working on. Let's see.
Currently, I'm working on the climate sensitivity on tropical species. I'm working on how the influence of influence of climate change on the fruiting pattern, on the morphology of a tree, and on the even the branching pattern, how climate influences how a tree produces branch, or how a tree produces fruit. How big is the fruit? The size of the fruit does it influence by the prevailing temperature, humidity, or rainfall? So this is part of my current research activity, and I'm working so hard also to identify species specific. I'm trying to see if I work on about 20 tropical species in the next, maybe this year, next year, to identify their environmental requirements. So I could be able to tell those farmers, so before you go plant a tree, you must be able to know, can this tree survive in this environment? If they tell you before it has been there before, it does not matter. For example, when I was doing my PhD, I was doing a survey then. They told me that Orogbo, of course we know Orogbo, but bitter kola.
Yeah.
That bitter kola cannot be planted by human. It's only God.
So those are one of the myths that people say, myths about forestry.
Yes, it's like it's like a myth, yes. That is their own knowledge, because when they put it on the ground, after 4, 5, 6 months, we do not germination.
So they give up on it.
They give up. So probably they now pick the wideness. The wideness are those ones that are grown naturally in the forest. Maybe they'll be there for
under
years.
The trees that fell.
So they believe it's only God that makes this tree to grow. Then they can only get the seedlings go widening. Probably in this case
widenings,
now.
Yes.
Yes, widening in this case in the wide. So I've been able to do a research, and I observed that, and I planted this species. I subjected them to different treatment, and in a few weeks, like 2-3 weeks, they started coming up. So I have to go out to the farmers that we need to do a workshop. I educate them that this thing can be planted. This is what I'm going to do for the tree to be planted to grow. And after it grows to some level, you need to gradually acclimatize it to the field. And this is the type of soil this tree will be planted. This is the type of very close to the water body. This is a kind of environment, and these are the type of trees that can grow around it. So that's when I was able to do a capacity building workshop to educate the farmers. And also, yes, to educate the farmers on those aspects. They are very, very important. Of course, we are promoting agroforestry. So we also try to identify tree species. We call it accompanying species. It is also part of my current research. Accompanying species. If you see, for example, we are assuming we are friends. We are 30 now. If I see you in Dubai, I look around. I should see your friend there close to that place. So because you work together, you move together. The same thing applicable to trees. There are some trees that once they grow, there's other trees that will grow around them. So we call them accompanying species. So I also try to identify those accompanying species to those species of interest. So by the time you are planting, you are trying to set up the plantation of that species, you try to introduce also those accompanying species. Those one will make your species of interest to strive very, very well. This is the aspect of work that we have not been doing in Africa. We don't just, for example, now they said Iroko, for example, cannot.
Militia SSR.
Yes, Iroko cannot be planted alone. If you try it alone, it will die.
Wow.
But studies have shown that when you put Iroko in the field and put some other species around it, it will survive. So those are accompanying species
that can go
yes, they can go outside that
yes.
When they are there in the field. So when you put those your species of interest, of course you are sure that it will strive.
It will strive.
So that was why we also try to promote this what do you call it again, mixed plantations, because it has been a major source of it has been helping so much in the area of ensuring that plantation survived.
Well, yes, what we are doing in PADI today is we are championing the cause of bringing research to the fore, bringing research to everybody, of course, not just researchers, not just doctors and, professors, but also to people who can understand and use this. Like we said, we have debunked some myths, like you would understand. We said, of course, according to his research, he said, people who don't plant Garcinia cola, they expect that they'll just pick white lanes. But of course, he has been able to debunk that based on his research and his works. Of course, you've also seen the fact that Militia excessa, which is Iroko tree, people would say that it will not grow in this particular condition. So he subjected it to different treatment and different ways, and of course, yes, he got the results and he was able to educate farmers and people. If you want to think about this, yes, what we are doing is quite good, especially for the African community, for Nigeria as well. We are trying to bring out these things. Many people don't know this until they get to see this, and that's why Plant a Decade Initiative, in collaboration with Immaculate Television, is trying to do this work to make sure that, of course, the less known or the unknown becomes known to the world. Exactly. That's why we have PADI. Once again, it's been a nice time having you, Doctor, in the house, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so very much.
I'll be glad to be available again.
All right.
Because when you come to the issue of climate education and forestry, it's always it's as if it's my calling.
About
this is my calling. I always want to make people to understand this.
All right. So
thank you so much.
Thanks. We hope to have you some other time. Thank you so very much, viewers. Watch from across the globe, wherever you're watching. Thank you. This is Immaculate Television. Once again, my name is Anulu Akboido. I'm your forest communicator as well as your climate action advocate, and of course this is PADI, Plant a Decade Initiative. Join us next time for another edition of PADI till we meet again. Thank you. Keep the environment clean, and also remember that we are working towards achieving a sustainable environment. Take care.